Hi there my friends, welcome back to my channel. I've taped a piece of £140 watercolour paper down to a board, masked out the area for the bird and the branch with masking film, and now I'm just coating the background with some clean water. So hopefully no strokes will appear, or brush strokes will appear in the background. So I'm working quite quickly, just getting a load of INKTENSE down, 2 different shades of blue from 2 blocks, INKTENSE blocks. And for those of you that don't know what INKTENSE is, it's a water-soluble ink produced by Derwent. So just making sure there's a good amount, working quickly, and then applying a little piece of cling film over the top. Now it's always best to cut your cling film before you need it and make sure it's bigger than the sheet of paper that you're going to apply it to, because as you can see I'm creating wrinkles, and the wrinkles will take up more of the cling film, if that makes sense. So you can mess around with this for a few minutes. I did stand up to do this. And then once you're happy with the direction that the wrinkles are travelling in, you need to let this dry naturally. So I let it dry overnight. If you lift it off too early, then the effect isn't the same. The effect will be dulled. And as you can see in the background, it worked really well. I didn't have to mess with the background at all. Once it was done with the cling film and dried, it was good to go. So moving on to the northern cardinal. Oh, it's a bird I wish we had over here in the UK, but we don't. It's an American bird. So first of all, I went over the area that I wanted to paint with the INKTENSE with water again, so that the colours would move about and I wouldn't have any hard lines where it was staining the paper too quickly. So just going on, and now I'm working with the INKTENSE pans. It's the same product, just in a different format. So for those of you that are new to INKTENSE, as I said earlier, it is a water-soluble ink made by Derwent. It comes in a variety of forms. It comes in the pans like this. This is a 12 pan box. You can get a 24 pan box. You can buy the pans individually. It also comes in blocks, and it also comes in pencil form as well, and all are sold open stock, which means you can buy 1 colour, 2 colours, or a handful of colours, or you can buy the sets. So just working nice and gradually, building up a scruffy base layer. And yes, all paintings have an ugly stage, and this is definitely proof that the painting does start out looking a bit like I've painted it with my left hand. So just applying some darks and just letting the inks do what they want to do at the moment, and just teasing them around different areas. All quite self-explanatory as you're watching this. Now if I go on to an area where I've applied ink already with a damp brush, it will lift it only while it's still wet. As it begins to dry, it becomes more and more permanent, and they are staining colours. I don't think any of them don't stain paper, which means once they're completely dried, they are a little bit harder to lift. And you'll see later on in the video, I use a scrubber brush to lift a few stubborn areas. It will never take you back to the white of the paper because it's stained, but you can lift a little bit of colour with a scrubbing brush. So just working in around delicate areas, taking my time, and remembering and keeping in mind this is just the first layer of quite a few layers. I've never painted a cardinal before, and I just thought with winter approaching, this would make a nice subject for, yeah, cuddling up with a big mug of coffee and just painting something cold looking, but cosy too. So nice contrast in the finished paintings between the cool areas of the background and the warmth of the bird, and enough contrast as well between darks and lights, which was nice. I really enjoyed this piece. So going on now, if you see me working on a fresh layer, it's normally when I've completely dried the surface with a hairdryer, but up to now I haven't got the hairdryer out, so everything's going wet on wet pretty much. And obviously the type of paper you use for your painting will determine how fast or how slow your paints dry as well. So hot press watercolour paper, I've found that the Inktense paints dry a little faster than when used on cold press. And this paper that I'm using is a cold press paper. I believe it's the Bockingford, but I'll list everything in the description below. If you can see down the edges of the branch, there is a slight hint of blue, and that's just where a little bit of the watered down colour seeped underneath the masking film, but not a problem. When worked in plenty of layers, these paints, although they look quite transparent, they can cover up a multitude of errors. So that's the sort of first coat on to the bird itself. Now I haven't dried anything with a hairdryer just yet, and it is allowing me just to lift off a little bit of the darker pigment with a damp clean brush, and then I'm just wiping off with a tissue as needs be. So I use a variety of brushes in this painting. Obviously you saw the big flat brush at the beginning to apply the water, and then the Derwent blocks for the background, and then slowly coming in and using smaller brushes. You can use your watercolour brushes with the Inktense, you can use acrylic brushes with the Inktense, anything really. Sorry if I've gone out of frame a little bit there. Just darkening up the stomach area of the bird. Just putting a little bit of a shadow in where the branch is. But I'll be back in a minute. Gives you a good look at those base coat layers. Okay, here we go. And it is nice when you're working with your base coat areas to think, where do I want the more saturated areas of the bird? Where do I want things to look more glowy and warm? So the tummy area and the chest area, by putting that yellow and orange undercoat in to begin with, anything I put on top of it, as long as it's thinly applied, a light layer, you can still get that warmth and the glow coming through the layers on top. So just taking my time now, looking at my reference image. Obviously when I put the base coat colour on for the head of the bird, I completely covered up the darker area, this black area, and that's fine because I knew that the black would be able to cover it up, the darker area. And the colour I'm using at the minute, I've mixed the reds we've been using, I've taken some of the blue from the background, I'm using that in this mixture, and some purple as well, and you can really see the purple coming through. So black is a colour that is available in the Inktense range. It's in the 12 pan as well as the 24 pan set, as well as the blocks and pencils. But if you apply black on its own, it can look very flat. So I try to stay clear of using black if possible. And just at a push, I might use it in tiny areas. But I prefer to mix a dark with the colours that I'm already using on a painting and that are already on my palette. And working up in many layers, you can create more depth in a colour than just using black on its own. And the same goes with white as well. If you're using white in any painting, Inktense included, then less is more. Leave it till the very last thing you apply, and then hopefully you won't apply too much. So just rushing through now, getting a base coat on that beak, and all I'm interested in now is covering up the white of the paper. And still this little chappie is in an ugly stage. Now what I was very careful with when working this Cardinal was not to overlap any areas of the background, especially with the yellow, because obviously yellow over the blue of the background and you'd be creating a green tone. So just being careful around the edges. I do tidy up the edges in a bit, just by using a more concentrated wash of pigment. So hence more pigment, less water. If you want a colour to look darker, then use more pigment, less water. If you want to use a pigment but make it look lighter, then just add more water to it. I don't really think you can add too much water to Inktense. They pretty much work however you want to use them. But their transparent qualities are beautiful, and their colour is so saturated, the pigments are so saturated, they're wonderful. So I'm just tidying up that edge, and what I've done, I've taken the white out of the block set. And just to make things clear, I am a Derwent ambassador, so all the products have been sent to me to use and to review and to make videos for Derwent, but they are fantastic. It doesn't alter my view of them at all. They're just one of those things. I get sent them, I get to work with them, and but I will always give you my honest opinion. So what I've done, taken the white block out of the Inktense block set, mixed it to a very thick consistency on the palette, and then just tidying around those edges. And as it dries, you can tint it. So just because I'm working with white doesn't mean to say it has to stay white. You can glaze over these Inktense inks with other colours, and as long as the foundation layer, the base coat layer, is dry, then you can alter its hue lots and lots of times. So just dabbing the brush off there and doing a little bit more lifting just before everything completely dries. As I said, you won't be able to take it back to the white of the paper. You'll see that later on the tail when I do quite a bit of lifting of pigment on the tail. Even though it's been painted onto a white piece of paper, the paper remains stained underneath the layers. If you want more movement with your paints, then remember, go wet on wet. If you want less movement of the paint as you apply it, then go wet on dry. And somebody did ask me about whether I frame my Inktense paintings. Yes, I do. So I just treat them as though they're watercolours. They go behind glass. So I matte them with acid-free matte and then put them behind glass if you're more wary, because the light fast ratings on these are fantastic when they're dry, but once water is added, the light fast properties are a little bit questionable. So if in that case you want to put them behind glass and display them in your home, then you could try putting them behind UV resistant glass instead of just a normal framer's glass. I've been painting with Inktense for years, and I've got many of the paintings hanging around my home, and I've never had a problem with anything fading. I've sold paintings created with Inktense, but I have advised the client that they may not last for a long time. They've kept me regularly updated every sort of 6 months or so. Nothing's faded, but I do advise people, if you, with any painting in any medium, never hang in direct sunlight, keep away from radiators and things like that. And yeah, I've not had a problem with the light fast, but I don't want to say there might never be a problem with the light fast. And Derwent has said the light fast properties are good when dry, when the medium is dry, but once water's added, and let's face it, all artists are going to be adding different quantities of water, different ratios, so it's really difficult for Derwent to then say how well the light fast qualities are going to last with these products. Obviously, the more you thin down a product, and that goes with watercolours as well, the light fast is questionable because the pigments are further spread out and more open to the elements. So working wet on dry now, so I've dried off that initial base coat layer, and I'm just adding a little bit more pigment to the surface, keeping in mind the direction that the feathers would be growing on this bird. And he is a little bit fluffed up, he's probably feeling cold with all that icy background, so a little bit fluffed up. But these have a tendency to blend almost when you put them on the paper. They do spread out slightly. You can get really fine details, as you can see with the feather details next to the branch on the left, but they do, it's really hard to describe unless you're working with them, that they have a softness about them. They do tend to blend very well with the colour that's underneath, even when applied wet on dry. To get round that, if you don't want such a soft effect and you want more harsh, definite lines, then definitely increase your pigment to water ratio. More pigment and your lines will be more noticeable, more prominent, because as the water seeps into the paper, it's taking the pigment with it and it just settles into the paper as opposed to drying on top of the paper. I think that's how this soft effect happens. I might be wrong, I'm not a scientist. I get paid to create, not to work with test tubes and things, although I could feel that could be fun. So working just down the side of the bird now, and hopefully I've kept everything else in frame. Hope you're all keeping well. Can't believe we're in November already, and everywhere you go now, Christmas things are out and Christmas music is playing, and yeah, it's cosy season, isn't it? It's lovely. Do love it. So just altering the hue of the colour I'm applying, so I've gone a little bit more orangey now. So still working with the original red and just adding a touch of yellow, the warmer yellow out of the 12-pan set. And apart from the white that I mixed to tidy up the edges, the rest of the bird is created just with that 12-pan set. So just softening the area now, the transition from the warmer tones of the chest of the bird moving down towards the branch where the shadowed area of the bird is going to be, and just softening that transition slightly, just so it's not a huge step from one area to another. Now I've used the red of the pan set and mixed in a little bit of the purple from the pan set just to make this darker tone going under here. Now really watered down pigment just to get this first base coat layer, and because it's such a small area I didn't wet this area first, I'm just going wet on to dry. So the only reason I wetted the bird area first was because it's such a big area to start putting pigment on, and you don't want to take too long in one area, come back to the initial area and it already be dry, because you might have some stubborn marks, brush marks on there that would be difficult to alter or remove. So small areas wet on dry, big areas wet on wet. And obviously it goes with the speed of your painting. If you're very fast at painting, you might get away with working wet on dry all the time. if you're a slower, more meticulous painter, then it might be worth popping a little bit of clean water onto an area first. Even if you let it dry slightly, you know, let the water settle into the paper a little bit, and then apply the paint on top. Always best to test things out on a spare piece of paper if you can, before applying them to your project. You can see here all the lovely shapes in the background created by the cling film. And the cling film, if you're environmentally minded, you can stretch it out on a board, get a damp cloth or a damp sponge, clean the cling film, dry it with a piece of paper towel or let it dry naturally, and then you can keep using it, because the Inktense did wipe off the cling film and left the cling film really clean and ready to go again. The masking film that I used to mask out the bird and the branch initially is by Frisket, and unfortunately once you've used it once, you could probably get away with using it twice at a push, but it loses its adhesiveness on the back after one use of it. You lose quite a bit of the adhesiveness. 2 uses of it and the adhesive qualities on the back of it have gone completely. And onto the tail. So this was really quick compared to the body of the bird. I'd made a fresh coffee and I just wanted to get colour onto that tail, and I just went about it really roughly, to be honest, because as I said earlier, you can glaze, you can alter colours with additional layers of transparent colour. So I just wanted to get the main darks in, the main shapes in, and then I would let glazing do the rest of the work. So at this point I wasn't worried about the colours that I was applying, as long as they were roughly in the right area of colour, then I just went with it. And this is speeded up, but honest, this tail was so quick to do, because I knew I didn't want to add any detail or anything like that. I want the focus to be definitely on the face of the Cardinal itself. I had to keep in mind that I wanted the light to look like it was shining through the tail feathers. So tail feathers within the middle of the tail would be overlapped more than on the edges, and so hence that's why I was making some areas darker and leaving some areas a little lighter. There you can see that the colour really didn't matter at this point. I just wanted to cover the white of the paper. And then start applying washes of different colours, just so I could get the hue of the tail overall the right colour. Keeping my strokes going in the direction of the feathers themselves, just in case there was a brush mark there that I couldn't lift or alter, then it would look like it was travelling in the correct direction anyway, and it would look natural and not a mistake. And there I am going on with the glaze, and between popping this glaze on and the previous portion of base coat layers, I did dry it off with a hairdryer, so I'm now going wet on to dry. And another glaze, so I've dried the tail off again and going on with the 3rd glaze, or it might even be the 4th glaze now. And it just pulls everything together. Now this is a scrubber brush, so everything's completely dry, and all I'm doing is I dip it into some clean water and then very carefully just lifting a little bit of the pigment out where I want the highlight to be. So I'll never get back to the white of the paper because the pigment is stained, but it gives me a natural highlight. So very few things in nature are white, and if I'd have gone on this with the white block, it would have looked very unnatural, but just by going in and lifting a little bit of the pigment, it really does a good job. And this brush, I believe, is called an Eradicator, and you can get them in different sizes. They're by Rosemary & Co, a UK company, and I'll link everything in the description. Now with an Eradicator brush, you are removing pigment, but you are also disturbing the tooth of the paper as well. So if you are going to do anything like this, be careful not to overdo it, because it will damage the surface of the paper. Sorry my hand's in the way, but I'm doing exactly the same thing, just lifting very slightly some of the pigment. And just softening the edge there as well. So again, clean water and dabbing it off with a clean tissue, and just make sure that you're turning the tissue around in your hand each time, and that you don't accidentally try to blot with a piece of dirty tissue that already has pigment on it, because you will just place that pigment that you've previously removed back onto your painting. Some areas might need going over a couple of times like this, and some areas just once. But slow and steady, don't overdo it. Just because you've found a new technique, don't think you have to use it everywhere, because it sort of ruins the effect then. And if you're using this method of lifting, make sure you've dried everything off completely first, else you'll have water stains. If you go on with a wet brush, it's likely to leak out into wetted areas. Whereas if you've already dried everything off and then you put the Eradicator brush down, it's just going to dispense water just in that area and nowhere else. If in doubt, step back or go and make a coffee, come back, have another look at your painting. Because when you've sat in front of a painting for so long, you can lose sight of what you're actually trying to achieve. Different ways of seeing your painting afresh is I often take photographs on my phone of my painting in stages, just so I can have a quick look to see if anything's off. Things like proportions and things like that should be picked up in the drawing stage of a painting. If you notice a mistake, please don't leave it until you're adding paint to alter it, because the further into the process you go, things like composition and shapes and sizes are so much harder to alter once you've started adding paint and you're further into your painting. Try and tick these off a checklist, with your initial drawing before going any further, because graphite is so easy to erase, paint not so much. So the branch, quick and easy. I didn't want anything to distract from the bird itself, but I wanted the branch to be in keeping with the background. So I used one of the blues from the background and a Payne's grey from the block set, mixed them on the palette and added a tiny touch of purple, the purple that I used on the black facial markings of the bird, and then just applied them to wet paper. So as you saw me, I went along the branch first with clean water and then just popped pigment in very loosely and just let it do its own thing. Then a little bit of lifting to create some markings on the branch. Now just mixing up a very light wash and getting those toes and the bird's nails in, and just taking my time now. I knew I was nearing the end of this painting, so I probably went and made another coffee, slowed down, deep breaths and relaxing. And some people get really nervous about coming towards the end of a painting because of making a mistake. I mean, you've done all of this work and now is the moment of truth as you do the finishing touches as to whether it's all going to work and come together. But just take your time. It's only a painting, and you, especially beginners, just tell yourself it's only a painting. You can do it again, maybe not on the same day, maybe another day, or just take what you've learnt to your next painting. But it's only a piece of paper with paint on it. So working nice and gradually, looking at my reference image now, and just applying the lightest of strokes. And just working with one colour, one very watered down colour at the moment. Just to get the form of those toes and claws in. And what I did there was added a little bit of the background blue just around the toes on the right hand side, because the background hadn't gone right up to the toes, so I needed to add that in. Now I've mixed up the same colour but more pigment and less water, and it's created this darker, thicker tone of colour. And just add in the shadows. So the white of the paper is your highlight. The next layer of paint on the toes and nails would be your mid-tone, and then these is the darker shadow areas. And you don't need to use tiny brushes for tiny details. This is quite a big brush. I think it's a number 6, but it comes to a very fine point, which means I can load the body of the brush up, the belly of the brush where the bristles are quite wide, load it up with a lot of pigment, and it'll keep feeding that very fine tip for as long as I want it to. Well, until it runs out of water and pigment. Just adding a little bit of red there and coming down to that toe, and then filling in the gap there. And a few feathery details. I hope you're all keeping well, and thank you for joining me today on this painting, and I hope you give this new tutorial with the cling film a go. It really is an enjoyable process. It's very random, it's hard to plan that background. You can get a rough idea when you apply the cling film in which direction the lines will appear on the dried paper, but be patient. It may take a couple of goes for you to feel more confident with this technique, but it really is a wonderful technique to use if you're not too concerned about the outcome. So just adding a little bit of reflection there on the branch and shadows onto the branch of where his toes are. What I haven't included in the painting, or in the video, sorry, is I mixed up some of the Derwent white and just applied a little bit to the branch right at the very end of the painting, just to depict an icy, frosty feel to it. But you'll see that on the finished painting. And don't forget your toe shadows. I nearly forgot them, I must admit. And they do make a big difference, don't they? Looks like those toes are actually sitting on the branch. And there you have it. Cardinal, frosty background, Derwent Inktense. Thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate you all. Please leave a comment if you have any questions, and I will see you all soon. Bye for now. Bye. Hi there my friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to share with you a little experimental painting that I worked on over the past couple of days. In 2023 I was lucky enough to go to the Arctic on an expedition, and this inspired me with the colours for this particular painting. Now this painting is only 8 inches by 11 inches, and I did it again as an experiment for a larger piece I'm going to be working on. I'm using the Derwent INKTENSE blocks, and if you haven't heard of those before, it's just a water soluble ink made by Derwent. They come in pencil form and in block form, and I'm working on a sheet of Fabriano Hot Press paper. It's 25% cotton and 140 pounds. And the technique I'm using, a lot of people call it spontaneous, because you literally have to let the medium just do its own thing, and it's quite random how the finished effects occur. So I didn't have any plans at all. I just knew I wanted to work with 3 colours, and I'll list everything in the description below that I used. And just adding the medium, the paint, the ink in this case, to a piece of paper, spraying it in different areas with a little spritzer bottle that is also by Derwent, the one I use, and then just letting the colour flow. Where it touches wet paper, it'll flow a little bit faster, and you can help it along by spraying it where you want to. It is a messy process, and I didn't know whether this video was actually going to be worth sharing at the end because of me having to keep tilting the board. But you can get the idea what's actually happening. Obviously you can pick the pigment up and pop it onto the paper with a brush, or as you can see here, I'm just wetting the end of one of the INKTENSE bars and just letting the pigment drip onto the paper. And as the painting progresses, personally I can start to see things within the patterns that the paint creates. And it led me to the finished painting that you can see in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. But for now, just getting this background in, I'll let the music play and I will jump in and add some commentary when needed. It might be worth mentioning at this point that when Derwent INKTENSE is dry, in the dry form, the light fast is good. But they can't actually say how light fast these products are once water has been added, because obviously different artists are going to work with different proportions of water. But what I do is I do use deionized water when I'm using the INKTENSE products, and that just minimalizes the amount of contaminants in the water. So hopefully these will last many years and stay nice and vibrant. They are really known for their vibrancy, the INKTENSE range. So just adding a little bit more water there, letting it do its thing. You do need quite a sturdy paper, so obviously this is going to take quite a bit of battering. There's quite a bit of water being thrown at it, but because it's on such a small scale, this sheet of Fabriano works relatively well. It does cockle, but it does dry back into place with a hairdryer. And once I've finished one layer and I'm happy with how that's settled, then I do dry it off completely with a hairdryer. And another thing to mention, which is something somebody picked up on at a local class that I taught, is that I leave the cellophane wrap on this board. And the thing is, I can get this board as dirty as I want, and there's no problem just wiping it off. None of the water seeps into the board. So that's why there's a clear wrap still on the drawing board. Another thing worth mentioning at the moment is that Inktense when it's dry, so when the pigment has been wetted and then left to dry, it's pretty much permanent, and that's one of the lovely qualities about it. You can use it on fabrics, canvas, paper, just about anything really, but you need to make sure that all of the pigment has been activated, because you might think everything's dry and permanent, but if the pigment in certain areas hasn't been activated, then it will activate it on the next layer. So just something to keep in mind. And because it's staining, it actually stains the paper, they can be relatively hard to lift too. This was quite a quick project. I think I completed it in just a couple of hours, and obviously it's easy to relax when you're doing one of these projects because you're not copying or working from a reference image. You're literally playing, experimenting and just having some fun, with plenty of coffee in my case. Those that know me well will know that I do like a mug of coffee. So just spraying some more water on the bottom. I really, at this point, I didn't know what I was going to be doing with the bottom of the painting yet. I just wanted to get as much as I could of a natural effect, an organic effect. And I think the top half of the painting was doing that for me. It was giving a sense of stylized realism, I guess. And I just love the colours. If you've ever been to the Arctic or you've seen photographs from the Arctic or videos, there's all these turquoises and greens in the ice, and it is just amazing. It's spellbinding. So every now and then I would just stop working and just pause for a moment and just look at the painting. And I haven't kept it in the video, but I did keep standing up as well so I could get a higher perspective on the painting and how it was developing. Because when you're hunched over or sitting really close to something, it's easy to lose your vision of how everything's progressing and forming. So just by standing back, especially between drying times, it's nice just to get new perspective, see what can be tweaked. Obviously I didn't want to mess around with the painting too much because it's supposed to look organic and naturally formed. So I then took a photograph of the piece how it was, popped it into my iPad, and then digitally I added some water at the bottom to see if that suited how I wanted the feel of the painting to be, and it did. So I put my iPad away, made another coffee, back to the painting, and I just wanted to add a sense of water at the bottom, but I didn't want to depict a big ocean or anything like that. And again, the ocean, like everywhere else in the world, the ocean in the Arctic, it does reflect the colours that are surrounding it, and it's quite a vivid turquoise teal, well really a teal colour, really vivid colour when it's up against the rocks and the cliffs and the glaciers and things like that. Lots of colour in the ocean, but I didn't want to make it too in your face because I didn't want to pull away from the colours that are actually in the background itself. And it was now that I was thinking a little polar bear somewhere would give a feeling of the immensity of the background. So you'll see that coming up in the next clip. So just softening some of the edges out there very lightly. While everything's still wet, you can lift the ink to a certain extent if you're quick, and then just drying that flat brush off and just being able to lift a little bit to create some lights. But I do go backwards and forwards. As you can see in the finished painting, the C part at the bottom does end up a little bit darker. So then I got a little see-through sticky note, sketched out the outline of a polar bear to the scale that I think would look nice on the painting, and then I was able to move it around, flip it, you know, backwards and forwards, seeing what composition felt pleasing to the eye. So just moving it around, and I'm standing up again to do this, so I'm getting the full view of the whole painting. And I decided I quite liked him facing that way. So facing against the diagonal direction of the landmass that he's supposed to be walking on. And yeah, I liked it just there, or thereabouts. So off I go for another cup of coffee, and then zooming in, I transferred it using just a piece of tracing paper. And this is when I reached for some white gouache. It's the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, and it's just, yeah, a white gouache. So the reason it's called bleed proof is it doesn't allow colours underneath to bleed through it, so it's pretty opaque, but I did find I had to layer it up a few times. So once the Inktense was dry, it does have sort of a slick feel to it. If you tried to go over it with coloured pencils or anything like that, I think you'd be struggling, because there is sort of a sheen. It's not shiny or anything like that, it's just got a very slick sheen to it. But the gouache works really well on top. And obviously there wasn't any really dark colours or tones to cover up. So a couple of layers of white gouache, and then I moved into mixing the Inktense blocks with a little bit of the white gouache to create colours in his coat. It seems quite funny watching this bit, because I didn't realise I was painting this part last night. Don't think I realised I was getting really tired. It'd been a long day, and obviously working on something so small is quite tiring too. So yeah, no wonder I was tired. I'd forgotten how small this little polar bear is. The Inktense paints and the gouache work really well with watercolour brushes. I don't use any specific brushes. I intermingle them with my watercolour brushes that I use, and I haven't found any damage to any of my brushes, and I've been using Inktense and gouache for many years now. So even though the Inktense comes in blocks, it is literally literally just like using watercolour pans. Yeah, they're not gritty or anything like that. It's quite a soft pigment to work with. So you can use your normal brushes, your normal watercolour brushes with gouache and with the Inktense, whether the Inktense is in the pencil form or the block form. And another brilliant thing about the Inktense is they are open stock, so you don't have to buy a whole set. You could just buy a couple of bars or a couple of pencils and just give them a go. And they work on pretty much anything. As I said, they'll work on any sort of paper you have, cardstock even, canvas and board. I've not tried them on wood actually, but I think they'd work. Just give them time to dry them off with a heat tool or a hairdryer, and you'll be good to go. So just getting a little bit of detail in, but obviously not detail as in a load of detail, because it just wouldn't be visible at this sort of distance, you know, looking at the size of the environment that the polar bear's in. So just want to give it enough form to make it look like a polar bear. Obviously not white, because polar bears aren't white. We were really blessed. We saw 11 polar bears while I was out in the Arctic in 23, and the group, the expedition group that went out before us, they hardly saw any, so we were very blessed to see them, and it is amazing seeing them in the wild. Yeah, just amazing. So when I'm adding colour on top of this white gouache, anybody that's worked with gouache before will know it is reactive, so you can keep reactivating it with water. So I'm having to use a very light hand. Sorry about my grubby fingers, they're covered in paint, but yeah, just a very light hand, because when I'm adding this colour, it would be really easy to lift the white gouache that's already been laid down, and then you'd be back to your background colour again. So a little bit at a time, just adding a very, very light hand with the pigment, letting it blend a little bit with the white, but not so much that the white will lift. And then between layers, which is you're not seeing because I've deleted that bit of the video, I'm completely drying it with a hairdryer. So drying between layers, and then a really light hand, because even when the gouache is completely dry, you can still add water and reactivate it if you want. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bit of a pain, but it's just one of those things you get used to, and you don't end up thinking about it really. The more you use it, it's like any medium, isn't it? The more you use it, the more you get used to it, and you sort of go into autopilot, and you can enjoy the process instead of worrying about the techniques. And there you have it finished, an Arctic inspired, spontaneously painted scene with Derwent Inktense and a little bit of white gouache too. I hope you've all enjoyed my video today. If you have, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all soon. Bye for now. Bye. Hi there my friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I don't know about you, but I love finding new techniques with existing mediums. So today I thought I'd have a play with some Inktense pencils. So I made a little swatch of the colours that I plan to use, just 4 blues, and I will be introducing white and an orange as well. There's the numbers if you want to zoom in and have a look. I will pop them in the description. And I needed a piece of fine sandpaper too for this particular technique. So you know, if you want to cover a large background with Inktense pencils, it can take forever. So this is a sort of a speeded up way of creating a background colour without the need for colouring in the whole sheet of paper. So for those of you that don't know what Inktense is, it's a water-soluble medium by Derwent. It's available in pencil form and in block form, and you can buy them open stock as well, which means you can just grab a handful of colours and just have a play with those before you jump in and buy a whole set. So just working from the top to the bottom of this paper and just grating on lighter colours, going to the darker indigo at the bottom. So once I got some pigment onto the paper, I used a tissue. Now I'm using a sheet of Meeden cold press paper, so it's very toothy and it was eating away at my tissue paper, so I do go in with my fingertip instead, but you could use a lint-free cloth or something like that. Pop some distilled water into a spritzing bottle, also by Derwent, and then just started to activate the pigment. Now when Inktense has been wetted and all the pink pigment has been activated, it is permanent, which means you can't lift it. But if some of the pigments remain unactivated and you then go on top with water or another pigment, the pigments that haven't been activated in the first layer will then activate. So just have a play, and as you can see, the pigment starts to move around really well. It's a messy business, so I put an old tea towel down to mop up the mess. So just wiping the edges. I have popped a bit of acid-free masking tape around the edge of this block of paper, just so it would dry back flat. So just mopping up that excess there. Hope everyone's keeping well. Now as you can see, it's quite an interesting process. The results are a little bit hit and miss, but I think the more I do this kind of technique, the more control I'll have over it. So just popping some lines on just to represent rays of light coming down. I had a rough idea of what I wanted it to look like, but as I said, it's very hit and miss, but you can control it a little bit. So a clean damp brush and just mopping up some of the pigment while it's still wet. You won't get back to the white of the paper completely, but you will lighten areas by going in with a damp brush and just tapping it and just letting the Inktense do its thing. And I was just shifting a little bit of the pigment there to cover the bottom left hand corner with a brush, and now got it at an angle, so it's at about a 15 to 20 degree angle, just resting the board, or I should say the block of paper, on a little stand. And then again just mopping up, and now I've dried it with a hairdryer and it dried completely flat. Popped a second layer on as I did the first, dried it with a hairdryer and completely flat again. Now I've gone on to the palette. This is a textured palette by Caran. Popped a little bit of water on there and popped some white INKTENSE pencil on there and just picking it up with a clean toothbrush and flicking it on and then letting it dry. So the white INKTENSE pencil isn't very opaque to begin with, so you have to let it dry to see how opaque it's going to be. So the thicker the mix, the more opaque the white is, and that goes for the rest of the pencils as well. The colours are generally quite transparent, so dried it off with a hairdryer again, sketched in a little gull. I believe this is a juvenile kittiwake, and beginning just to add the layers now with a brush, and I'm just using the white INKTENSE pencil pigment. So keeping in the lines, and thankfully the layers underneath didn't react. So that means all of the pigment that I'd previously popped down and activated, and there was none left unactivated. I hope that makes sense. So you can do this with, well, especially the background, you can use watercolour pencils to get the same effect. And it's all about just playing with your materials. There's nothing worse than having materials sat on a shelf or in a drawer or in a cupboard and just sitting there and not being experimented with, or just using them in one certain way over and over again, because that in itself can lead to something called artist block. I don't know if you've experienced that, where you just feel stuck. You just want to try something new, and it will break you out of that quite quickly. And if you don't know what to draw or what to paint, I've popped a little sticky note there with a number 3 on, saying that this is the 3rd layer that I'm now working on. So building up that opacity, yeah, the more the merrier, just building those layers up. And I am working from a reference image for the juvenile kittiwake, but obviously I didn't for the background. So as I was applying the background layers, it just came into mind that it looked like the sea, I guess, ocean waves crashing together, and adding those rays of light coming down from the top left hand side just really, I don't know, really brought that thought further forward in my mind, I guess, that that's something I wanted to achieve. So with the background being so dark, I knew that a subject placed on top would need to be a little bit lighter to add contrast to the piece. If I'd gone in with a dark coloured seabird, it wouldn't have looked so effective, I don't think. So contrast plays a big part in any artworks. The more contrast, the more pop your painting or drawing will have. So going in with a lighter subject always helps if it's a very dark background, and vice versa. So just applying this 3rd coat. I'm so glad I put that number 3 there, else I would have been lost as to which layer was actually on. So just moving forwards a little bit, the brushes I'm working with are really cheap Golden Taklon, which is a nylon fibre brushes, and I bought this set of 10 brushes from our local B&M store for, I believe they were £4, but I'll link them in the description, as well as the INKTENSE pencils. I have lots of INKTENSE tutorials and demonstrations on my channel. I've used INKTENSE, the blocks and the pencils for airbrushing and all different kinds of techniques. And this is just a new technique I thought I'd try. So I have done this technique with watercolour pencils, and it just gave me the idea. Wondered if it would work with the INKTENSE too, and it does. I also tried this grating technique on a sheet of hot press, Meeden hot press paper. It was okay, but some of the granules of the darker pigmented pencils didn't activate as well as I'd hoped they would. I don't know why that's a difference between the hot press paper and the cold press paper, not sure, and I will need to experiment a little bit more in the future to find out why, and if I could use that to my advantage too. So the whole painting took about an hour and a half, and I've trimmed down the video footage just to 21 minutes, nearly 22 minutes. So drying each layer off as I go. So that third layer, once it was on, I dried off with a hairdryer. And now, yeah, I've zoomed in for you on this because this bird is so small. Using the 4 blues, orange and white, just to get the detailing onto this gull. Now you can see just going on with a little bit of one of the blues and activating it on the palette, the textured palette, and then applying a little bit of water to my brush, clean brush each time, and then just adding the pigment to the paper, and it isn't lifting the white that's underneath. So I was really happy about that, the base coat pigments that I grated on and activated didn't lift, and once dried with a hairdryer I was able then to layer up with the white, and the colours didn't lift and the white doesn't lift once it's dry. So all in all, so far so good. The experiment was working as I'd hoped it would. You're never quite sure when you're using mediums in a way that's different to how you would normally use them, but it's all a learning curve. That's why I love art. The whole journey is just a never-ending learning curve. We're never going to know everything, but what we do know, I truly believe we should be sharing with others so that they can enjoy their art journey too. If you do like my videos, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. As fine art and art creators, we are finding it really difficult to get our works and videos shown to new audiences, and hitting like and subscribing really helps the algorithm, and sharing with other people too helps as well. So as you can see, you can work wet into wet and wet onto dry to help the pigments blend together, and it's a lovely medium to work with. I am a Derwent ambassador, but I don't get paid for saying these things. I'll always give you my honest opinion in my videos, and the INKTENSE products, the pencils and the blocks, work wonderfully, and the colours are vibrant and they dry matte, which is great if you like to photograph your finished work or scan your finished work for prints and things like that. The light fastness can be a little bit of an issue with the INKTENSE products. When they're dry, Derwent gives us the light fast ratings as being extremely good, but obviously everybody is going to work with them slightly different once water's added. Some people might only add a tiny touch of water, some people might add a lot, and obviously that is going to alter the light fast properties of each pigment. With the white, building up the white here, I've created a thicker mixture on the palette, so more pigment, less water, to help me define where the highlights on the bird actually are. And you can go backwards and forwards. Once this is dry, if I've gone too light in some areas, dry it with a hairdryer and add a glaze of colour over the top. And what a glaze of colour is, it's just a very thin down, transparent layer of paint that tints the colour underneath. So you don't lose any of the detailing and things like that, you just alter its colour and hue, or just tone. So I thought I'd keep this bit nice and zoomed in for you, just so you can see what I'm doing. And as I said, it's a really quick process. I think probably the longest part of this whole painting was the going on with the 3 layers of the white to begin with on the gull. So in my mind I've got the light coming in from the left hand side. So where the light would be hitting some of the feathers on the wings, just adding little tips of highlight there. Now, if you're going with a subject over a background and you've covered the background in already, it is nice to let the background show through a little bit in the subject, and it gives me a little bit of shading so that I don't need to add colours in certain areas. And you'll see that as I build upon the wings, that I do let that background colour show through the semi-opaque base layers of the bird. So just remember, if you're painting birds, the feathers aren't completely opaque, especially the large flight feathers. Some light will be shining through them, hence leaving some of the background colour showing on some of the feathers. If you'd like me to produce any videos of a certain medium or a certain subject, just pop it in the comments below and I'll add it to my to-do list. For those of you that have been around a while and followed me for a while, you'll know that I work in all different mediums: acrylics, graphite, charcoal, inks, pastels, watercolours, gouache. Acrylic gouache is a new one that I've added, and oils as well. I know I've had a couple of people ask for oil pastels, so that's something that I'll be working forwards into my videos soon. As you can see on my brush there's a little bit of white pigment that hasn't been activated, so just to keep in mind, you need to keep activating your pigment so you don't pick up another pigment and the two mix on your brush or on the paper when you don't want them to. So it's still there, I can see it now. So when I'm using the INKTENSE products, I don't use my best watercolour brushes because the INKTENSE does stain, and I find they work really well with the golden Taklon brushes such as these. You can also use acrylic brushes if you want to with them, and just because they dry permanent on the paper or fabric, if you want to use them on fabric, they don't dry permanent on a palette, so you can reactivate them on a plastic palette, which is great because that means no wasted materials. So for instance, when I did the first layering on the bird and popping these pigments on, waited for them to dry, went and made a coffee, came back, they dried on the palette. I just added a little bit of fresh clean water, reactivated them, and then off I went again. So just putting these mirrors on the end of the flight feathers, just with the dark indigo colour that I'd used at the bottom of the background and the beak, the eye, and now going on to these mirrors on the feathers. So it's really nice to keep a limited palette as well. So just 4 different blues, the white and an orange pencil were used in this painting, and it gives a sense of completeness, I guess. It's really tempting when you open a box of pencils or a big pan of paints and you've got all of those beautiful colours in front of you to keep dipping in and pulling more out, but the trouble is it doesn't unify the painting. Then sometimes less is more, and especially for beginners, I do suggest you always start with a limited palette, maybe just 4 or 5 different colours, and then add a couple of colours where you think they're needed, but try and keep them in the same colour family if you can. So just bringing in a few darks here, and I know that once this is dry, I can dry this off with a hairdryer, or I can go away and make another coffee. Come back, and as long as that pigment is dry, I can go over it with more darks or lights. So if I want a colour to be lighter, I just mix a little bit of the white with it. It's such a fun project, and it's just an amazing medium. It really is. The vibrancy that can be achieved with these Inktense products is amazing. Obviously the vibrancy of colour in the product isn't shown so well in this particular project, but some of my other projects, there's a toucan and the beak is very bright, very vibrant. I'll pop a couple in the description, a couple of other videos in the description, and you'll see how vibrant these colours can actually be. They look more vibrant when they're wet, so keep that in mind as well. It's always best with water soluble mediums to make a swatch sheet, so you can see how they actually dry, how vibrant, how light or dark they're going to be once they're dry. So I do suggest, if you do pick up a handful or even a set of these products, is to make a swatch sheet and try and swatch on the same paper that you know you're going to be working on in the future, because a bright white paper swatch is going to look different, or is going to give different results to an off-white or a cream coloured paper. If in doubt, swatch it out. So just a nice little video with a new technique that can be used in the backgrounds or foregrounds, and that's how it ended up. So thank you so much for joining me today for this little video. I do hope you experiment with the mediums you already have, and until next time, bye for now.